And then it was Saturday, October 12th, 2024. Another painfully beautiful production on D Mind Booma-san's Rumble channel. And I am D Booma-san, the digital samurai for true. I kind of messed it up there at the end. Wanted to fade out. Anyways, what's up, everybody? Man, I'm loving the comments on that last video. See where everybody at on this channel is with the Q stuff, and we're gonna cover a bunch of stuff that's kind of in that realm today. We're gonna get into Mockingbird Media and alternative fake news, and then I wanted to highlight how Katherine of the Imagination podcast. So Emma's someone that has been interviewing survivors for years now and doing some great work, but she was calling out Ariel on his BS on X. And I want to highlight that, go through some of that material, and get into a few things. So this is a Digital Samurai News. And let's see if we can restore some honor. So when it comes to like the alternative Mockingbird Media and the alternative fake news, I'm going to start, quoting those things more, because what has happened is that they've been able to create, like some people are talking about like the QAnon thing and Flynn's digital soldiers and stuff like that, and I think that's spot on. I think that's part of the psyop aspect of it. Whether everybody has their opinion on whether Q had any legitimacy and had any good intentions in the beginning, but as far as like the way that we have now disseminated information out into the social medias, Telegrams, X, Facebook, whatever it is, everywhere that we can post without getting banned. Speaking of getting banned, a lot of people are mentioning getting banned from Michelle Moore's show, and it's pissing people off. I totally get it. We're here to fight for First Amendment rights. Now, at the same time, there might be a couple people out there still listening to my show that I've shut you off because you were personally attacking me or saying things about the followers that I have, and I just won't stand for that kind of stuff. So personal attacks, you will get banned, but I do my best to try to allow people the room to share your thoughts and vent and have a safe place. That's what we need. We need a safe place. But what we're doing is, I'm seeing a lot of this stuff that just annoys me anymore, and I think people have good intentions, but they're just so easily not looking into things. So none of us were trained to be journalists, and it's not easy in this world, and we're going to start off with something that shows that. But people are disseminating information, and you're becoming this like digital soldier that like your best, like one of your bestie anons or one of your bestie friends on Telegram shared something, and therefore you immediately go 100% that is trustworthy because they shared it, and then you're sharing it, and it just gets spread all over the place like wild. And it's we've got to do better, because we're not trained as journalists, and that's probably a good thing, because we're not Soros owned or any of this crap. But we need to get better about researching things and thinking before we post. Now, I did it too. When I was in this Q stuff and whatnot, man, I saw stuff. I was like, Michelle Obama has a ding dong. Yep, that's legit. That's legit. Just sharing that stuff. Like, it's fun because screw them, kind of a thing, But we got to get a little bit better now after all these years. We got to refine ourselves. So I'll just point you to that. But it is tough. It's tough because check this out. So I saw this actually on Reddit when I was looking up GameStop stuff, but I just passed some like conspiracy thing or whatnot. I thought this was interesting. So what the F? And so they say here that P. Diddy Combs was spotted out and about in New York City hours before his arrest. This was the day before his arrest, apparently. But look at this. So if you guys don't know about the Cassie situation, there was a video where he was like literally like beating on this woman in a hotel. I think it was like in the hallway near the elevators, and it was all caught on tape. He tried to lie about it, said it wasn't real, and then they released it, and he had to apologize. So this is him apologizing. So look at his little facial marks and stuff like that. You can see whether any of these people are the real people. I don't know, but over the time, if you look at photos of P. Diddy, it seems like you can find these little marks on the face. And so what I'm pointing out here is that, like, this is legit. Like in the mainstream and in the alternative, P. Diddy's arrested. We all know that. However, even in cases like this is what makes it so hard in the alternative, because we're trying to decide if these people have been replaced, if that's proof that, that it's happening, that the Q plan is taking place where these people are being arrested behind the scenes, because these people don't look, if you look at his mugshot, like, they look like different people. The Hillary one was massively pushed, that she was taken out and hung and replaced. And we get these lookalikes. Maybe you want to see. I do believe in the cloning. You can look at Clone Aid, a website that's up in Canada, and it used to be a lot more. I think there was a bunch of videos of the founder woman, or at least the woman they put out front, talking about how they like had cloned people and stuff like that years and years ago. Now it's more like pets and stuff like that, and they act like it's a different kind of business. But they have legitimately been cloning humans. I do believe, me personally. But this is a legit news story, but yet look at the guy they arrested. This does not look like P. Diddy. I mean, it looks enough like P. Diddy to fool somebody that doesn't believe in any of these conspiracies. But the hairline, this brow situation that he has going on here looks different. The way that the head's shaped, fatter up top and coming down, looks a little bit odd. He looks younger, his nose, everything looks different. And this is the legit, from what I'm seeing, mugshot of when he was finally taken down for this more recent situation. It does look like a young Diddy clone. Doesn't even have the face moles. This is the kind of stuff that makes it really tough, so I get it. And I'm not trying to act like I'm all great and stuff. I've shared stuff that was wrong, and I was big into this. And then when the fallout happened with Gene Decode, that's when I finally started saying, like, man, I got to do better. I got to stop trusting guys like Gene and these talking heads that are like, the Scott McKays, the Jacos, the Kerry Cassidys and stuff, because they are misleading us. And a lot of times it's very blatant if you just research a little bit. So when I looked this up, this was the day before, but they were pointing out how he didn't have a beard in this. So if you were trying to persuade people to say that hours before his arrest he had a beard and he didn't, that one I did look up, and from all I can tell, this was actually from a day before the arrest. And here is the picture of the mugshot. So this is legit news in the sense of, Diddy pretty much widely, you can say that he's been arrested. But now you're looking at it as like, is the real Diddy really arrested? That's where this crap gets tough. And you wonder if they're just doing this on purpose, because CIA has been involved in Hollywood for many, many years, maybe even since pretty much the beginning. They created all this stuff to basically skew the view of all of us, whether it's through movies, television, or even into the media and all that kind of stuff. And so are they involved in this truther movement? Well, you got the Mike Gill stuff and the claim that Shelby Bush had said that she went to a meeting and 98% of the alternative media is controlled or handled by the CIA. Do they put that stuff out there on purpose just to drive us conspiracy theorists nuts, or are they protecting the real P. Diddy and he's off living in the dumps somewhere where it's like a mansion down below? And I don't know, man. Like, that's the kind of stuff that makes a lot of this really tough. But then what I want to get to is this, where people are sharing and all over the place. And I'm not, mad at anybody for sharing this kind of stuff. If it's convincing. AI is so convincing now that these pictures have been taken and thrown out there. But the reality of it is, and not that we trust all the fact checkers, but they're coming in and saying, while the theme parks closed for the hurricane, these images are AI art designed to sensationalize, or in this case, completely make up the events. There are no reports of any flooding of Disney. So there's multiple things that I want to talk about here. Hopefully I get them all out, because I have all the stuff in my brain. I don't make notes, and I don't script things. It doesn't feel natural to me. But so there's AI that we're contending with, because this has been at least, fact checked, and a lot of people have disproven that this is at all the case. The problem is that people are pointing out, or trying to make this sound like the tunnels are taken out. And this is what's been driving me nuts for a long time in this movement, even when I believed a lot of this stuff, because it goes back to the video that I did on Gene, where he talked about how no one died in Afghanistan. It was all a movie, and he laughed about it. And then Trump over and over was saying it was the most embarrassing thing that had ever happened in the United States military, kind of a deal. And I was just like, this is not adding up. Why would Trump be lying about that? Why would you I don't know, maybe making Biden look bad, but you're seeing reports of legit people dying and babies and all this kind of stuff happening from the Taliban. So what I'm saying here is that you're trying to say, because I think it's pretty much widely accepted that the baddies are the ones causing these hurricanes, because why would you say that the good guys are causing these weather warfares, killing lots of people, ruining their livelihoods, their homes, their businesses, and sometimes death, and then the ultimate suffering that's coming from this, and losing everything that they, held dear. You can't put that on the good guys doing this. However, they're trying to do it like they've done for all kinds of things, like through COVID and all that. Spin it as a white hat operation to take down the dumbs and the tunnels underneath Disney World. This kind of stuff, to me, and I've been in communication with like DL of the Unedited Truth, who I love her, whatnot. She living in one of the states that got hit by the hurricane, and it just breaks our hearts to think that people are trying to make this out to be something good while people are suffering and dying. We need to consider these kinds of things. And then the ideas of the AI and whatnot's being used. And here you go. Because that's how easy it is to create AI generated images of the things that people want to put in. If you put in Disney flooding and being saved by Mickey Mouse, or Minnie Mouse in this case, or Goofy, you can create those and they look so realistic. So when it comes to these photos and stuff, we've A, got to be careful about that. We've B, got to be super, not that these are in order and in any specific way, we've got to be considerate of the people that are suffering and dying. It was the same thing while people were dying of the jabs and dying of whatever they were doing with the WBAN situation and killing people, trying to say that it was a cover for the good guys to go in and arrest all these fools. And yet here we are many years later. And it's just this mystery of the Gitmo stuff that we'll touch on a little bit in this maybe, or at least connect it to Real Raw News and the BS reporting that happens with Gitmo, because Epstein didn't go to Gitmo. Maxwell, Weinstein, Diddy ain't going to Gitmo. Gitmo ain't for celebrities. It ain't for American politicians. It's for military terrorists, and it's for non-Americans. So you can say that they're lying, all that kind of stuff, but people got to do better. And with this kind of stuff, it's very disrespectful for the people that are really dying, suffering, and losing everything to say that this is being used by the good guys. And we're going to get into one when it gets to this Ariel post here in a moment. But I want to show you, look how realistic that looks. And that was just AI generated. Someone put that in. So we've got to be so careful about what we share. And if you shared this stuff, then it happens because whatever, but just be willing to say, to correct it, but also consider that if this really happened, if they were flooding the dumps, think about all of the contamination that could be down there, the diseases that could be down there, for one. Two, is there any reports, even though I would say that they're fake reports, of the children being rescued, if there were children down there, or any of the people being held hostage? You would assume, I don't know, we're getting into fantasy land here, but I would assume that if children, or if they have dumbs underneath Walt Disney, that includes children, for one. Two, you assume that if you're going to report that they're flooding the dumbs, that there would be a report, even if, like I'm saying, it would be fake or fabricated, a report with this kind of intel that children were first rescued before they flooded it, because then you just murdered a bunch of innocent children that were held captive down there. But then the idea that all the contamination and the various things that would come to the surface would be something that they would have to tell the public if the good guys actually were doing something like this. And it looks like, as we look at some of the information that I'm about ready to share, that there is plenty of proof to show what was really going on the morning after Hurricane Milton at Disney's Beach Club Resort. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone from Beach Club Villas.
Doesn't look like it's all flooded and everything's destroyed. The lights are on. Pay attention.
Just taking a look at some of the damage from last night. Looks like mostly just some branches and leaves have fallen, and
just some branches and leaves. And this is a person literally there at the Disney's Beach Club Resort.
I can already hear they've got people out here cleaning up already. So doesn't look like a lot of damage here. We still had power when we woke up. They're cleaning up. I didn't even hear anything last night. I don't know if the soundproofing is super amazing or if I'm just that sound of a sleeper, but I didn't hear anything last night. So I hope everybody fared okay and stayed safe.
It's just someone literally on the grounds there. And then they're saying, oh, Disney is okay. Posted 2 days ago. I'll link to this kind of stuff if you guys want to look it out more. But I'm just kind of trying to show you, like let's reserve our desire to throw out their stuff, even if it sounds so good. That's what I'm saying. You're spreading the hopium, but you're also not taking into consideration the people that have been displaced, the lives that have been lost, and those kinds of things too. I know it sounds great that the children are being rescued, but we've got to be a little bit better and careful about what we share. Is all I'm really trying to say here. And so here's just another example of what it really looks like here at Disney. Milton damages at Walt Disney World Riverside Resort. Someone walking here and it's not flooded. Obviously it got hit by a hurricane. So there's a bunch of leaves and branches and stuff down, and I'm sure there was building structure damage, but things look all right here. Light's still on. I think this is the day after. So I'll link to these things so you guys can take a closer look. But let's just calm down on some of the stuff that we're posting on this, because like I said, it gets to the point of being like super disrespectful to the truth, to the lives that are being lost, to the people that are losing everything, and those kinds of things. That's all I'm saying. But it's become the alternative Mockingbird Media when someone puts out disinformation, and it could come directly from the CIA or a CIA handled person or a person that just means well, but they just want to be the first to put the news story out, and then it just gets spread like wildfire. And if you look up Disney World on X right now and just look at all the kind of stuff, the flooding, it's all the AI generated stuff, and it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. And then it becomes alternative fake news. And we've got to just do better, is all I'm saying. And then just bringing your awareness to this kind of stuff. So what I want to get into, like big time, that really kicked off a lot of stuff on X that I just think is important, is because this also ties in, obviously, to the Mike Gill and the Michelle Moore stuff, but I'm not so focused on that because I did agree with Mike before the breakup happened that Ariel needs to be taken down. And Michelle's brought him up plenty on her show, and I think even after the breakup, she mentioned Ariel, some post or whatnot, and thanked him. It's just like, you said that no one knows who he is on your channel, so why out him? I think that there's something going on there where there is an issue. However, this is what I'm saying. It's these big, huge accounts. He's got like 430,000 people or something like that follow him on X. That's a pretty massive account for alternative media, if you will. And then they share stuff like this that we're going to get into here. By the way, did you all know the U.S. military captured the kingpin of human trafficking yesterday? It was said he had dozens of facial surgeries to evade law enforcement for decades, and about 40 of his henchmen were caught. Guess what? This means he has dirt on every person who was ever involved. Prepare. So this, another, no name, no link to any story or anything that we could even say is fake news in the mainstream media yet. This is the real truth, from like an insider or whatever. But I don't even like the insiders. The anonymous fake inside military intelligence was Gene Decode, and he's just a complete fraud. He believed that the right-hand man of Putin was communicating to him after a second dumb decode. And I challenged him, not challenged him, I actually just tried to say, yeah, that's cool, Gene. Hey, do you have can I see that email? And then he got all pissy and like questioning me. And it's just like, I'm just asking for proof, bro. Like, you're saying that the right-hand man of Putin is emailing you because you did such a great job on your dumb decode that I now know somebody else did, other people did, and you didn't even freaking fact check it or change anything. You just took it as if it was a miracle of God that they like knew exactly what it was, even though they have no experience doing any of this. Anyways, no proof, no nothing was shared. And so I originally saw this because Emma came in, and we're going to get into Emma Katherine's because there's a little bit more stuff that I want to get to. We'll get into that in a moment. So I call this out. This is alternative fake news and the kind of trash that needs to end. No source, no proof, just pretending to have inside intel and pumping out false narratives that stop real work from being accomplished and spits in the face of survivors like Emma is rightly pointing out. I'm sick of it. And I think Emma does great work. There's all kinds of controversy on every person that does this kind of stuff, and I think it's all on purpose. I think it's the CIA. But Emma rightfully calling this out here. So let's take a closer look at what Emma's actually saying. And the funny thing is that Ariel deleted this post. And Ariel was trying to say that he got it from like a military person. Well, we're going to take a look and see exactly where he got it from. It was pointed out to me early on, even when I was covering Ariel, that he just takes from smaller accounts and then builds on top of it and then acts like it's his intel. There's all kinds of things with these lying grifters. But anyways, so before it got deleted, I was looking through the comments and stuff, and that's where I got some of this information that I'll be sharing. So people do great work. I'm not taking all credit for it, and I'm going to highlight Emma in just a moment. But he was trying to say that he heard it from his a military contact, and Gene would do that all the time. So listen to what people say when they're like, big figures like Ariel in the sense, or Gene Decode, or Jaco, Michael Jaco. We're going to get into a touch on him a little bit. They could have just somebody emailing them that they don't even have any idea where they is, but whatever it is that they share is something that would be juicy for the public to know about. And then they'll go on a show and they'll say, my contact said, my source says, and then you'll ask, well, who's the source? Oh, I can't give up that information. But it could really just be a nobody or something they saw on the freaking internet for all we know. But they're really crafty about how they do that. So always pay attention to those kinds of things. But for when they don't even have any links to anything or any kind of verifiable proof, why are we just willy-nilly believing it as if it's the gospel? Please stop doing that, or at least question these things, is all I'm asking. Emma, finally, we'll get to you, Emma. You rightfully came in here, and I loved what you did. You're falsifying information here, and probably got him to, eventually delete this post. It really hurts survivors in the survivor movement when you listen to intel that have no idea what they are talking about over survivors who were actually in military black projects. The military is literally run by traffickers and pedophiles, and they are complicit in covering up crimes against children. If you'd listen to actual survivors, you'd know this. Instead, you're writing extremely misleading posts that couldn't be further from the truth. The kingpin, which would be who exactly? The military is not taking down kingpins. They are run by kingpins, many of them. These posts hurt the survivor movement, not help. Please listen to survivors and not these intel who are clearly, extremely, and obviously disconnected from the truth and have no business speaking on any of this. And then there's all kinds of proof. Maybe I'll do a Ariel exposed video eventually, but all kinds of proof that this guy really just tried to build a following for the monetization on X. He might not be selling any products, but he is making thousands likely a month just based on other people sharing how much they make based on the followings they have and the kind of views they get and interactions they get. I've seen those spreadsheets. So Ariel is likely making thousands of dollars a month through X monetization. You don't have to sell products or gold or any of that stuff to be a grifter and be a lying fool. And there's a history of Ariel where he's, interacted with people, and it's basically just to build a following and do exactly what he's doing. And then he pretends to be connected to military sources. So there was other stuff that she showed as proof. Obviously, I don't have time to play that whole 18 minutes or whatnot, but the CIA sponsored MK Ultra, a survivor of these programs. This is what Emma does. She interviews these people, and I'm going to get into it a little bit here because here's an example for you. I've never heard of this guy. I don't even know who he is until now. Julius W. Gates, the disgusting scum of the earth, coward of a man who owned and programmed Monarch, MK Ultra, and satanic ritual abuse survivor Carrie Olahe. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Featured in video below. As a sex slave from the time she was just a small child, Julius was a distinguished sergeant major of the Army with an entire resume of other military accolades and promotions he was granted for his service. The United States military knew of the heinous abuse he did to children and rewarded and promoted handsomely for it. This sick pedophile was knowingly allowed to have child slaves, plural, per the CIA/military. This is who your military allows to be in positions of power with zero recourse for their pedophilia and abuse. The U.S. military is complicit in crimes against children and MK Ultra child experimentation. So when it comes to the Q stuff and whatnot, it's really hard to argue that there's a good military right now, and a lot of them were forced to take the jab. Trump left power. Even if you want to say he's still Trump CIC, but he publicly left power. You had guys like SG Anon trying to tell us years ago, at least 2 years ago when I was still into him, that the military was being cleaned out. But then you got, Nathan Reynolds, Gray, and some of these people like Emma Katherine and the survivors coming out and telling you nah, nothing has changed. These kinds of people are still in there and operating as usual. So where is the cleanup actually happening? And that's what I want proof of. That's their take. You can have your own take. I'm not saying all this is their take on things. So let's take it into consideration at least, instead of just being in the Q echo chamber of everything's being handled and the good guys are in control. And I'm not against Q. I believed it for a long time. I still want to believe it to a certain extent, that maybe not so much Q, but I want to believe that there is a good group even to this level of military, not these guys, not this guy, this pedophile, that there are good guys actually trying to break free of all this and fight back, and that they have a plan for getting us involved and saving the children, ending this crap. So she's calling out literally the people involved. This is the gentleman here. I'll show this on the screen. You can take a snapshot. I don't want to go through all this in depth because I know some of you aren't on X, some of you are, and maybe some of you have already seen this. But there you go. You can take a look at him and who he really is, according to this. And I do want to, for this episode, is play this one video because it goes into what is important to remember. And remember that Emma is literally doing interviews with the actual people involved in this, and they're telling you about this kind of stuff. I was in this cell with a cage that was identical to mine. In that cage was the corpse of a rotting child. The smell of rotting flesh was overwhelming. Monarch and satanic ritual abuse survivor, Carrie Olahay. I'm going to play this. This is one of the tough things, so just be aware of that. And then, it just ties to whistleblower testimony of an actual survivor. And I do not see a lot of them coming out and saying that anything is changing with the military, or at least the military industrial complex. Who knows what's really going on? But let's play this, and then we'll move forward with kind of deconstructing some of this fake alternative media and how we have to get better and have to take more things into consideration than just the Q echo chambers, just the echo chambers that a lot of these talking heads, like the Gene Decos, the Scott McKays, the Jacos, the Kerry Cassidys, the Madison Marquettes, whoever it is that you prescribe to, especially the Fildos, stop listening to them and start doing your own thinking. Or if you still listen to them, like I'm just saying, think for yourself and take into consideration the people that actually have the life trauma experience to speak to it.
Essentially, it was going from the large room to essentially, like a cell, a small room that was, pretty identical, single hanging lamp. It was all concrete. It was very dirty. There were like roaches and shit, like running around and everything. You can go ahead and pull up the next image, So, and then essentially this one, this was probably all the parts are like rough, but this is probably like the roughest part of the memory for me, just because it really was just essentially being, I had been placed in a room in this, this cell with another cage that was identical to my own, that was essentially had like a little rotting corpse in it. It was a little dead kid. And they looked really emaciated, like they had, like they had starved to death, basically. It was a little African-American child. And it was just, the smell of like rotting flesh in the room was overwhelming. And it was just dealing with I've always been a very empathetic person, so it's, you're dealing with all like the fear, of yourself being in that position, of being essentially like left in this cage in a room to die, and that's just kind of what's constantly going on in your head, is like that fear. But then also you're going to have a lot of empathy, because it was just feeling sad knowing that had happened, to that kid, that for me was really difficult, that it was just, to be able to, for hours on end, to just contemplate, how sad I was for that kid, how sad I was for myself and not understanding why I was in that position, that it was just, it was just really horrible. And essentially it would be me, you can go ahead and take it down now. It would just be me. Essentially, I would go back to that cell like every time, but essentially in between times, it would be like being pulled out to essentially be like raped in different ways. It's like each time there was like a different kind of like theme to it. It would be being taken to like another room that was really similar, but a little bit bigger, that had like a metal table on it. And like, it would be, you know, tied spread eagle essentially, and having like, you know, initially it was being raped by a machine. So you had this sensation of being raped, but you couldn't see anything. So it was being told that it was like demons essentially, you know, and that, you know, like next time it was going to be worse and stuff. So then you go, you know, back to the cage after that shit, you know, and it's like, so it's the dealing with like the, pain of that kind of stuff, you know, in addition, and I also had like, you know, the rape memory with my dad had not happened yet. So it's like, so this was also my first experience with actually being fully vaginally raped as well, you know, was, you know, it'd always been like, you know, fingers before, you know, so something like more drastic. This was like the first time that had been the case, you know, and then you go back to that room essentially, you know, and then you're like, they pull you out later, and then you're back in, you know, the rape room, I guess I'll call it, you know, which is essentially a spot, you know, and this time it's someone dressed as Lucifer, you know, basically a devil, you know, big horns and shit like that, you know, and they're the ones that's like raping you essentially. And then it's back into the cell.
Oh man, that's so tough to listen to. Okay, so Emma is coming on and saying, just please listen to the actual survivors and what they're telling you. Some of these survivors, it wasn't that long ago that they were going through this. So I wanted to point out one more thing, and it gets a little controversial for some people, but there's no white hats. You have the wrong idea about who these people are. You too need to listen to survivors. White hats and black hats both play for the same team and have the same coach. It's a chess game that they win no matter what. An interesting fact. This is just another take. And I'm not sharing this as if it's gospel. It's another take, but it is one that I weigh, and I'm willing to weigh instead of being in the echo chamber to believe in the fairy tales. I'm not saying it's all fairy tales, but this is another perspective that we need to take into consideration. A lot of these survivors won't even go on the Truther podcast because they know that a lot of them are just CIA controlled. And they don't, a lot of them, from what I gather, looking in on it, because I'm not involved with it directly, but a lot of them just don't even trust Trump. They don't trust anybody on the world stage because of what they've been through. And whether or not that's right or wrong, it's not up for you to decide or whatnot. And they've been through some stuff, so I understand it, and I sympathize for what they've been through. But pointing out here, Emma Katherine saying, or at least sharing, did you know the 33rd degree Freemasons are also sometimes referred to as white hats? The 33rd degree Masons are sometimes referred to as white hats within the fraternity because, as we talked about in a previous topic, the color of a Scottish Rite Mason's regalia hat communicates different things about that member, such as whether he is a regular member, an officer, or a recipient of some other honor. The color white is reserved for those hats worn only by brothers who have received the 33rd degree. That's another take with the white hats and black hats. But I did point out that Q didn't even mention the white hats and black hats very often, and it came later in the game, and there's lots of great discussions on that last video that I did about whether or not it was infiltrated, the Q boards were infiltrated at some point. But this all comes back to the original post that I'm trying to get at, is that when you have people like Ariel that have a huge following, it's no different than, you know, like a Scott McKay in his heyday, like hundreds of thousands of followers that reaches out to potentially millions when so many people are connected to that Reawaken Tour and the various ways this networking does this and shares this stuff. But then you have the Mockingbird aspect of it with Michael Jaco coming in and echoing the same thing. Saying right here, and this goes into a little bit more that we're going to get into, but this one's literally saying military special operations just caught head trafficker of all time, Kingpin the High Horseman. He was captured tonight with his 41 henchmen. All the bodies floating down the river water were from the tunnels captured by these bastards. So it's taking a tragedy and it's putting the story into it, but you're getting an alias or whatever of this supposed person that was taken down, this kingpin, this high-end trafficker. And this is a big account. Jaco is a well-known person in this, well over 100,000 on even Rumble. and his various platforms. He's on X, he's on Telegram, and all these kinds of things. But they're spreading this kind of stuff, and then it goes out to the smaller accounts or the Anons or whatever it is, and it just gets shared and shared and shared. Here we go. This seems like a little more detail, because if you want to sell something, you got to have detail. That's what I'm telling you, and we'll get to the source of where this kind of stuff came from originally, and we'll talk about it more as this goes on. A little longer of episodes. Thank you for being here. This high horseman had 18 facial surgeries, and the military has been looking for him for 30 years. They were caught 7 p.m. October 8th. When you give specifics, I learned this with Gene, you give specifics and it's more convincing. Asheville is the #1 Wiccan community in the USA. Lots of bad there. And remember that it doesn't necessarily, this could be true, that it could be a major or even the #1 Wiccan community. I'm not disputing these kinds of things, because the best lies are masked in detail and truth. They have been flooding dumbs the past couple years. Gene said a long time ago, when I was still with him, early on, the 90-some% of the U.S. dumbs had already been taken care of. So all this kind of stuff now resurfacing is another thing to cue in on when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, personal, first-hand experience of being with Gene when he was disseminating all this stuff, and it used to be a constant in his Q&As. Where are the dumbs at in this place? Where are the dumbs at in this place? And he would give percentages. And it was a long time ago. And here we are. The same kind of stuff being regurgitated. And they get clicks. They get monetization on X and these various platforms. They make money off of this. And then it gets spread to everybody and goes like wildfire without anybody asking, like, okay, where's the news story about a kingpin taken down? And if you can't find that, why do we not have an actual name? Why can't you add something that gives us some kind of proof? It's all anonymous. They've been flooding dumbs in the past couple of years, and unfortunately the dumbs under Asheville had these bodies of the unknown in there. They were from that town. This stuff is getting spread like crazy, and these big accounts are Mockingbird spreading it out. And I'm just want to point at things, because what I did is I tried to find the source of this. So I came to this site, and there you go. Sign up for the newsletter, blah, blah. If you've never heard of this site, I've been meaning to get to it, because it is just, you look at this, it's got everything that a opium person would want for their addiction to this kind of stuff. But Judy Bindington, who's been wrong over and over again, Jasara is coming next month. Years go by, and nothing. QFS, Guantanamo Bay, getting into the Gitmo stuff, med beds, all the stuff that you want to hear in this whole thing. And it came to this Judy Bindington bombshell report. Military rescues 6 children kidnapped by FEMA for child sex trafficking. All ties into the things that we're seeing going on. As you scroll down, they also support Real Raw News. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I'm just going to touch on it briefly. On that same Tuesday, the 8th of October, 2024, in Candler, North Carolina, near Asheville, the White Hats arrested the kingpin of all-time human traffickers, the High Horseman, along with 41 of his satanic coven members. The coalition had fought off and killed FEMA agents in order to get to this satanic coven of High Horsemen, who they had tried to catch for over 30 years. There you go. Mockingbird Media in the alternative media being spread out. Candler, they put Chandler here, but it's this Candler, North Carolina. Now, I was hearing stories about how there was people, like hundreds of people, if not thousands, displaced there. I don't know how large that community is. It'd be another thing to look into. There was people trapped in a church that didn't have any food and water. Lots of reports coming out of there. But you're telling me that some anonymous military went in there and had to literally fight off FEMA agents and save these children. The story just keeps growing and growing. And if you still believe in Real Raw News, you're going to have to go back to the episode that I did on it. But just to touch on it briefly, in that episode, I went thoroughly through a lot of the research being done on this character right here that goes by Michael Baxter that runs Real Raw News. His real name is Michael Tuffin. It's been exposed. It's been shown long time ago, but people don't look into this kind of stuff. This guy, through these reports, now this was just a small Substack that reported on this, but it was a bigger news, and I've actually reached out to Newsgard to get further information about this, but the claim is the guy who writes all the articles on Real Raw News told Newsgard it's a satire site, exposing the insanity of rabid Trumpists who lack the mental wherewithal to distinguish fact from fiction. This guy is, like I said in that episode, and like I'll say again, good writer. When you add details to this kind of stuff and turn it into something that sounds plausible, that's what sells the story. He knows that. He's not even a conservative. He laughs at you, just like Fildo does. He makes up stuff, and he runs and laughs all the way to the bank as he just grifts our money, because we all want the children to be saved, don't get me wrong. It sounds like a beautiful thing, but understand who's behind these news sources. So when you see this AMG News pumping all the same stuff about Guantanamo Bay, Judy Bindington reports that have been wrong about everything, and then the real disasters going on in Candler, that apparently these people were stranded and a lot of bad things happening in that area, but yet you want to say that they took the time to go in there and fight off FEMA agents and rescue kids. This is where it's getting to insanity levels. And we participate in being that Mockingbird Media in the alternative media. And I'm telling you, man, it could be very disrespectful to people like the survivors, like we just listened to, telling a horrific story with Emma on her podcast. We need to do better, is what I'm asking to do. And I'm not perfect. I don't know all things. I'm bringing information to you, and I'm sharing this part of my opinion into this because it's breaking my heart to think that children are still being trafficked to such a high degree, and people are trying to say they're being rescued. And it's been years and years of these kinds of stories. I was talking to somebody that was always sharing the Judy Bindington report, and I was just pushing back and kind of having a little fun. I'm a little ornery, and I was saying, why do you believe that stuff? They've been wrong about everything. And they told me, I just like to hear good things. I want to believe good things are happening. So I get it. I can't fault somebody for wanting to hear positive news. I get to be dooma booma sometimes. I get that. But we've got to have respect also for the people. Like Casey and I have pointed out, human trafficking is gone since the Q movement happened, from $150 billion a year to $230 billion a year. These people, I fear, are running cover for it to continue to happen while we believe in fairy tales and stories. That is the problem about it. And it's been pointed out, and I'll point it out one more time. The Real Raw News puts a disclaimer on here saying that this website contains humor, parody, and satire. They say they've included this for protection on the advice of legal counsel. But you're telling me that this disclaimer, if everything they shared in here was true, just to say that for whatever reason, you're telling me that just because they put this disclaimer in here that the George Soros and the WEF and the deep state wouldn't just still be able to take this down? Like, you're giving me a break. They would take it down. They would take everything from this person. And a disclaimer wouldn't save him. No, this guy is literally doing this just so he doesn't get sued like any regular person would normally get sued for sharing something so absurd and defaming and slanderous as what they put in Real Raw News. A disclaimer isn't going to save you from the deep state. And they are literally using weather warfare, you can't deny, right now to still murder many people. They have power, and there you are, the grift. Make sure you donate. Oh, I hate how that stuff pops up. Please just look into these things more, and I will continue to report on them and do a little bit more digging. But I used to be just like this. I used to just share stuff because it sounded good, and I wanted to believe that's what was really happening in the world. And then Gene started slandering me, doing all kinds of stuff, and making up stories. And if you're willing to do those kinds of horrendous, evil things to people that are only trying to help you, that's where you see the demons behind a lot of these people. So be aware of these things. So this is where my search led, because I thought maybe AMG or one of those news sources was the source. It came from this, and I had never even heard of this Ginger's Liberty Lounge. This is where it came from, and it was actually shared by a guy that I think is funny, and I believe that he's addicted to opium, but it's Icons. I do like that guy. He doesn't sell anything. I've never seen him grift. I mean, I guess you could make an argument that some of these people are paid by the CIA directly somehow, and that's why they disseminate this information. But some people legitimately just believe this stuff, and I'm not against that. And I don't want to hate on Icons, because I think he's funny, and he was involved in like McAllister TV and Gene Decode as Gene was coming up. And I tuned into him sometimes, but he just gets so much into the Real Raw News and stuff that I can't take it seriously. But he could just literally believe this stuff, and I can't fault someone for believing this stuff. I believed it too. I was trying to believe that I was a freaking dragon from Gamma Draconia because I trusted Gene so much. Like this crazy woo-woo that I was involved. So I'm not hating on anybody, and I'm not even necessarily here to hate on Ginger, whoever this Ginger is. But Ginger explains success in white hat operation from a military standpoint. She might actually believe this stuff, so I can't necessarily fault her. But at the same time, this is how it happens, and we have to be aware of it. Incredible news that every patriot all over the world will love to learn. Exactly. They'll love to learn it because it sounds so great. Great things happened today. Massive capture took place today, and we have permission to give this wings and let it fly. So we're gonna listen to this. This is 12 minutes and 19 seconds. Maybe I'll speed it up at some point or skip through some stuff. But let's listen to this, and then we can all decide for ourselves. But let's get into some of this.
Hello, patriots all over the world. This is Ginger of the Liberty Lounge. Tonight is October the 8th, 2024. It is nearly 10:30 at night, and I had to come on and bring you some incredible news. Wow. So, as many of you know, the Liberty Lounge is aligned with the Military Alliance as well as the Celestial Alliance.
I never heard of the Celestial Alliance, and I've heard a lot of this woo-woo stuff that Ginger's about ready to get into. I'll try not to interrupt so much, but I heard hours and hours and hours of this over the time with Gene. And like I said, Ginger might legitimately believe this. Sometimes people want to believe this so much that they give themselves to it. But I couldn't get into Ginger's actual Telegram. Like, it's almost like it's blocked off and protected. But we'll listen to some more of this.
We have been permitted to share information with patriots, and our function is also to equip God-centered, heart-centered humanitarians.
And that's the heartstrings that guys like Gene point to, or that they lean on. And then when I'm trying to tell people that Gene is not to be trusted, they're like, he's just like a nice old man. He believes in Jesus Christ. He's a God-loving man. I don't think that Gene's a God-fearing man. I don't believe he believes in repentance. When it really gets down to it. But they sound all good and they lean on this stuff. This is part of the grift. And the Celestial Alliance, I had never heard of that. When I was with Gene, it was all about the Galactic Federation, Galactic Alliance, and there was white hats and black hats. Now it's morphed into, there's red hats, there's a Celestial Alliance. All this stuff has been added, and I don't even know where it comes from. And everybody's had their own different take in this kind of stuff. But the heartstrings that they pull on in this, that is what makes this so tough, because you think that they got to be just good people. And maybe Ginger's sincere in what she believes here, but she isn't doing her due diligence in fact-checking anything or questioning, or at least reasonably breaking down what she's about to share here, is all I'm saying.
So this announcement that I'm bringing to you is literally hot off the press. It has just been sent to me. I scribbled it out on a notepad to make sure that I quoted everything verbatim. Truth and honesty is extremely important to me.
It's so important that she scribbled it onto a notepad. Anyways.
First, I want you to know about the credibility of this source. This is the same source that was permitted to share with us about the militia movement, which I told you about a few days ago, which the White Hats wanted and encouraged us to get out on social media. They asked the Liberty Lounge to ignite the spark. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your receptive response and enthusiastically sharing that morale boosting message.
And that's where it becomes the Mockingbird alternative media. I pushed back. I've got into it a little bit with Ariel online, and he acts all tough, and he's a bully when it comes really down to it. But I asked him, why would the military choose you, Ariel? You say you have insider contacts, and you're supposed to be sharing truths with the world in order to get this information out there. Same thing with Ginger here with the Liberty Lounge. Why did they choose you, an unofficial person, channel, an anonymous person, to disseminate real truth and consider that intelligence? When the majority of the world will never hear this, will never accept it, and will never verify it as anything credible, because you have not been given any. No one's come out and pointed to Ariel as being the source to get information. No reputable person. And this idea of the white hats in this fairy tale continues. So I just wanted to say that. Let's go ahead and get into what she's about ready to break.
On the heels of that, we want you to know that it was quadruple vetted from 3 other sources. So that individual and then 3 others that are linked to operators also verified and validated the accuracy of the information.
Q said operators never divulge, and you're not even giving us even their anonymous name for who these people were that verified this. Like, once again, it's story, basically verifying story. Fairy tale, verifying fairy tale.
I want to share this incredible news with you. I apologize that I'm a little emotional because it's so intense. I'm like having to like calm myself because it's just so huge. The military alliance called this operator on the phone to pass along some incredible information that will make patriots all over the world just cry joyful tears. They didn't even care about anonymity at this point. As such, we must be at the end of this because there's no way in Hello Jello that they would have allowed what was shared to be talked about and spoken about on a regular telephone. But this operator made it clear to my contact they don't even care at this point about anonymity. He was freely able to talk on a regular phone. This is huge. In Asheville, near Asheville, I want to be very clear, the place is called Candler, North Carolina, near Asheville. The military special operators got this dude, and he is one of the biggest human traffickers of all time in North America. As many of you know, America is the #1 destination for human trafficking in the entire world. And this fella that they got, he was the kingpin of them all, like the big chief daddy, the biggest of all time. They got 41 of his top guys as well today on October 8th, 2024. It would have happened around 6 to 7 this evening. This is huge. They said that the White Hats have been looking for this cat for 30 years and that he has had 18 facial surgeries to try to conceal his identity all this time. The man's street name was the High Horseman. I had to go back to my message. The High Horseman. And he was captured tonight. Also, I wanted to share with you that the same operator confirmed that many of the children's bodies that have been found floating in the North Carolina flood waters were indeed from the tunnels. We also learned that those innocent of citizens affected by the floods, just trying to help their community, trying to look for survivors and look for their deceased as they've been going through the debris and the riverbeds. They have been finding adults and children whom they don't know, they don't recognize. They're not from that community. They don't mill about those little towns in the mountains. These are all people from the High Horseman's tunnels. I was also advised from the Celestial Alliance to remind everyone, in case you did not know, that Asheville, North Carolina is the #1 largest Wiccan community in the United States, if not the world. And by Wiccan, I'm meaning WICCAN, which is witches and witchcraft and the occult. So you know that there's a lot of satanic ritual abuse that would go on there. Also, the special operator informed my contact that this fact of this capture will be leaked on social media, that the white hats are using spaces like the Liberty Lounge on Telegram, other accounts on TikTok and on X, and that maybe within the next 2 days, the next 1 or 2 days, the white hats are going to be using those mediums to share this kind of disclosure. But you are getting it here first. And this is purposely being explained, and you're welcome to send it out. I've just gotten another message. Let me take a pause and let me read this to see if it's something I can share. All right, I also just learned that the helicopter that destroyed the volunteers' items, that they did have on a mask, and they were one of the good guys, and they were in the sky, and the helicopter was one of the operators manning the helicopter to look for this guy. He did divert to the distribution, and what I'm about to say might trigger some of you, so please let me explain. It was part of the operation to make Kamala look like a jerk, to sort of pin it on FEMA, to add pressure and distrust and angst toward Kamala and the Biden administration. In reality, that helicopter was on a seek out mission for this high horseman and his whole outfit. And the helicopter guy was a good guy, actually, but they did what they did on order to piss off the people so that they would have this fomenting anger and distrust and this rage for FEMA. So we want everyone to know they were good guys. Then they flew off and they went right back to the operations to getting the bad guys, the high horseman and his entire outfit. All of those bad guys have been taken in as of today. The plan is brilliant. Everything is absolutely on course. Woo! And this is Ginger signing out. Spread this, folks. Patriots, let people know the good news. There's no way they would have allowed us to put this out had we really, really, really not been near the end. I'm so excited. Way to go, White Hats.
And there you have it. Real Raw News didn't report on this, but Ariel's been sharing Real Raw News lately, and I just want to show on the screen here, instead of editing it in later, about how they do this, the satire. Hopefully I'll get a word back from Newsgard about, this email and whatnot. But the Newsgard did just destroy Real Raw News for whatever you want to take it for. But they all play together. And as Ginger was saying there, without any verifiable proof, saying they didn't even care about being anonymous, but you didn't even give a squad number or any kind of indicator. And there were people in Candler that were really suffering and going through horrific stuff at that time. And you tell this great story, some details, some things that could be true. They may very well be the #1 Wiccan in Asheville. I saw Gene do that all the time. Give more detail. He talks a lot when he's answering certain questions, and it's almost like an information overload. And it's almost as if the information is shared to such a length and degree that you think, therefore, it verifies it as well. So they go on and on. And like I said, Ginger might sincerely trust this person. But I used to joke that Gene would say that he would get one-way information from the Q Alliance, but then it would just get deleted out of his email. And I tried to ask him if he would be willing to learn how to screen capture. So if you get an email, boom, screen capture it and get proof, because he was telling us that BFS members, Blessed for Service, members of his team, were being murdered because of the information that we were sharing. They take it to such levels, to such stories, such theatrics, such some cinematics. They play on your heartstrings. They believe in God. They always talk about God, save the children, all this kind of stuff. They play on that. They might sincerely believe it. But I used to joke, because Gene would get pissed off when I'd ask him about the screenshots, and I'm saying, I just want verification because you're saying my life's in danger. But I used to joke that somebody that had a Q account or a Gmail account, q@gmail.com, was messaging him and just pranking him, and he probably was falling for it. That's how ridiculous it got with this stuff. Not here to demonize anyone as far as like Ginger goes, or Icons, or some of these people that shared this stuff out, but there is an issue here. I'd like your guys' feedback here in the community, but this is the problem, because it's people like Katherine, and Nathan's telling you the infiltration into the military. Gray is telling you, he's connected to the survivors and stuff. They're telling you these survivors don't trust any of this stuff in this truther movement, because of all the compromisation, the worship of Trump, and the people that they think are just all a part of the mechanism. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but they don't trust it. And they have good reason not to, from all the trauma that they've endured by the very military and stuff that Ginger's trying to say is saving them. Are there good people in the military? Absolutely. Probably a lot more than there are bad. But the people that are bad could very well be in control. And so when it comes to disseminating this stuff, we've got to have... You almost got to take in everything as if it's not true. When you first hear it, or when you first see it, tell yourself, what if this isn't true? And then ask the hard questions. She said that there's no anonymity there, and yet she gave us nothing. Multiple people verified this, but there was no even anonymous, not even to name one of the truthers or something like that as a person that verified it, or something, whatever it is, even if it were phony. Like, you just told a whole bunch of stories. This is big news. This has to be coming to the end. And these were the same stories that we were hearing years ago, especially when COVID first hit, and they were saying it was an operation to take down the baddies while everybody was locked down, kind of a deal. And then here we are today. What's true and what's not, I'm not here to tell you. But this kind of stuff, I can't find anything that could even come close to even verifying it, and I cannot get a justification for why the military or the white hats would decide that a Ginger's Liberty Lounge needs to disseminate this and it needs to be shared everywhere. And then for any of us to take it seriously, that actually have a critical mind and want somebody to give us an official, reason to believe this, because we take this to our friends and we just become once again, batshit crazy, and it divides us. The conspiracy theorists versus the normies. It's just ways they divide us, and that's the problem with disseminating this stuff. Not only is there disrespect for victims that are actually being suffering, the people of Candler that couldn't get food and water, but you're telling me they did this heroic, cinematic fighting against FEMA and taking down bad guys to get these high horsemen and coven members. We got to do better. That's what I'm saying. We got to end the alternative Mockingbird Media to the best that we can. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. We got to end the alternative fake news, especially with people. I don't know if Ginger's selling products or whatnot, but Jaco certainly is. He's been making millions off of us for many, many years selling us the stuff. He comes from the CIA. And now Ariel with this X monetization. They have all the incentive right there to disseminate this kind of stuff because it's going to get clicks and people are going to share it and they're going to believe it's true. This has to end, and we got to get better at critical thinking. And hats off to Emma Katherine for calling them out. Ariel ended up deleting that post, and if we put pressure like that on it, they'll stop with these things. I think it's going to get harder for them to grift. And then when Trump comes back in, if that's the case, we very well could see Kamala win, and then you could see the alternative Mockingbird Media go back to 2021 when they said that all the mass arrests were going to happen at the time. And they were always saying they have to commit the crime. So they have to inaugurate Kamala. And then that would be them committing the crime. And then the arrest would happen. But I'm saying, however it goes down, we can discuss that. They could push back the election, cause emergencies, and then we don't even have a November 5th. It just gets pushed forward. There's so many different ways this could go. But we've got to have our thinking caps on, be careful about the information that we spread, and start really critically preparing for whatever is about to happen. Because if Trump does come back in with a lot of this opium that's been pushed behind him, he'll never be able to live up to it. But if he comes back in, he's got to arrest all the people that do the election fraud, fix the elections, that's huge, start taking down all the human trafficking and the various things that we've been told is happening behind the scenes, disclose the truth of mass arrests, all kinds of stuff that needs to happen. It's not even debatable. These people have been pushing this for years. And if these things don't happen, we need to, I don't want to say the word attack, but in the same way is fact check them, or fact check has become a dirty word in the alternative media. I get that. But we need to demand more. We need to demand way more from all of these people in the alternative media. That's what it comes down to. And we've got to demand more of ourselves. Have respect for the people that are involved in these kinds of things. People of Candler, the people of Asheville, the people of North Carolina, and all these other states that have been involved in these horrendous attacks of weather warfare on them. Selling this kind of stuff to override the brutal truths of that, where we could be helping share information, trying to find legitimate links to if you want to give your money to it, give your attention, give the news to the real facts and the things that people need to hear. We need to share those things. So this was a longer, painfully beautiful production. I appreciate you all being here. Please comment down below anything that you got from this. I might have even misspoke on some things. I do that sometimes, but I'm trying to be more raw on these and just not edit so much. It's like the more this channel grows, I feel this bigger responsibility, and it freaks me out. But I'm willing to at least put myself out there and say these things and bring them to you so that we can all have a discussion down below. So if I misspoke on anything, call me on it. I'm not perfect. And it's just something that's been weighing on my heart, and my prayers always go out, to the children, to the people involved in human trafficking that are still stuck in it, believing that, maybe something's going to happen and it just never gets there. Well, let's start demanding more of that, and demanding a lot more from these bigger accounts, especially, as I showed on the screen, and from the news sources and the alternative media. God bless you all. I look forward to catching you on the next one. I hope your weekend's going well, or whenever you see this, I will talk to you soon. God bless, and catch you on the next one. Peace.